Okay, so the purpose of this recording, and just bear with me here as I am new to this assignment process and this software, um, is to sort of walk you through the this recording. I've already turned in the um, physical recording that you can see stopped in front of you here. Hopefully, this is sharing my screen. And I'm going to play segments of the video and pause it and sort of describe my process. And what this video was about was a mock recording, or I'm sorry, a mock therapy session that we recorded, myself, Jonathan Thomas, and Elizabeth Scuzzle. Now, Elizabeth comes to me. This is her first time in therapy. This is session 2 after the intake process had been completed, where we're going to delve in deeper into Elizabeth's background and what her presenting problems were. There were 9 skills that this video was supposed to be capturing. Again, this is a practice session for giving therapy. And those 9 skills were paraphrasing, reflection of feeling, open ended and closed ended questions, clarification, summarization, information giving, confrontation, interpretation, and attending behavior. And these things don't necessarily flow sequentially as they were listed. They will take place at various segments or moments within the interviewing process, within the therapeutic process, where they are appropriate, where the therapist felt they were appropriate. And the point is to give full attention to Elizabeth as this is her time. Um, so um, that was sort of what the video captures. But then on this end where we're going through it, the rubric is asking for me to do several things. So the first thing is my responsiveness to the topic. And this originally was intended to be a paper in APA format, but the grader of this assignment is allowing for a video reflection. So my apologies for me thinking in real time, but hopefully that enriches the experience and shows the amount of thought and time that I've given to this. So there are several pieces of criteria here. Again, this was intended to be a paper, but will be in video format. The first is my responsiveness to the topic. And so I'm doing everything based on 5 points, full credit for each segment. So the first one with respect to responsiveness to the topic is that the social worker clearly addresses the topic and responds effectively to all aspects of the assignment. Communication of ideas is the next criteria. And for 5 points, the social worker explores the issues, showing thorough comprehension of the text, goes beyond the obvious or class discussion. Next, we have organization. This assignment is coherently organized with ideas supported by apt reasoning. And finally, control of mechanics, sentence structure, grammar, and spelling this assignment is generally free from errors in mechanics, usage, and sentence structure. Since this is a video, I'm going to do my best to be as concise with what I see taking place in this video between Jonathan and Elizabeth. And again, discuss what some of the strengths and weaknesses were with respect to me as the interviewer. So without further ado, let's transition to this sheet that I got basically from Elizabeth. So what I thought was a good idea to help make this therapy session smoother was to basically submit to Elizabeth and have Elizabeth submit to me sort of like a case study format. And you can see here, she writes out in case study format, um, who Elizabeth Scuzzle is and some of her experiences. So it states Elizabeth Scuzzle is a 40-year-old Caucasian woman. She had a happy, supportive childhood. She is still close with her parents and her two sisters. She is physically healthy, very active, and has no history of depression or anxiety. She has experienced bouts of crippling insomnia for 20 years. So that's a chronic sleeping issue. Elizabeth currently has a stable job and has supported herself financially her entire adult life. She often refers to herself as fiercely independent and stubborn, perhaps to a fault. For the past 2 years or so, for the past year or so, Elizabeth has been feeling lonely and unfulfilled in life in general. She said these feelings were exacerbated about 6 months ago when she broke up with her boyfriend, Eric. They had lived together for 2 years when they hit an unintelligible rough patch in their relationship. Communication isn't her strong suit, so instead of broaching the subject with Eric and trying to work things out, she broke things off. She's having a hard time navigating all of her unresolved feelings. To numb herself, Elizabeth has begun drinking and consumes at least 2 to 4 drinks every night before bed. She said that on the weekends she consumes much more. It is beginning to affect her overall wellness and completely destroy her life, her ability to get a good night's sleep. Her parents are not drinkers, and no substance abuse runs in their family. Despite her stubbornness, she has recognized her downward spiral and has reached out for help. This is her first time in therapy. And then to help the therapist, John, she even included some quotes that she would probably share during the mock interview session. So one of them is, I'm feeling confused and frustrated. I've always been an extremely happy, very laid back person. I'm just not sure why I'm having trouble finding that these days. Another is, Eric and I had what I thought a healthy relationship. Suddenly, we just didn't seem happy together anymore. I'm stubborn, he's stubborn. I don't think either of us knew how to handle it, so I just walked away. Next, she states, I know we aren't meant to be together. I just can't get over how things ended so abruptly. I never got any closure. We had been together for 2 years, and I feel I owe him more of an explanation. Next, as far as the drinking, I know I shouldn't be doing it. It's just so easy to have a couple of drinks to shut my mind off. I know alcohol is not a long term answer, but it's a quick fix for me right now, since I'm having a hard time seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. A quick fix is all I need right now. I'm sad, so I drink. Then I become more sad from drinking, so I drink more. It's a vicious cycle. I feel so weak that I have no control over this. And finally, my insomnia has been terrible. I barely sleep anymore. I know I should be addressing that. It's making my whole life unbearable. So that really helped me to sort of orient myself to not only the assignment, but to actually utilize it within video format as the prior intake paperwork. And so, as you'll soon see, we begin. Here you go. Welcome. Thank you. It's nice to be here. Yeah. So the travel wasn't too bad to get here. It was not. Okay. Good. Yeah. Thank you. So last time we had a little bit of time after the intake process, and we spoke about your troubles with sleeping and insomnia. Yes. Where would you like to begin? So right there, you'll see that John immediately greets Elizabeth as she walks in. He shakes her hand, and he presents with a very uplifting effect. He's trying really hard to sort of demonstrate openness with his smile. He reaches out, so there's warmth with the handshaking, and um, he understands that he doesn't want to put the client in a feeling of discomfort, so he just offers a handshake. Again, this is post COVID, so people are a little less worried about a germ transmission at this point. You'll notice there's no masks on their faces. And so she seems to be comfortable and notices right away his warm, uplifting affect. He's smiling, as you can see where the video is paused. The first skill that he demonstrates right from the beginning is summarization. So you'll remember that summarization was one of the 9 skills that the social worker had to demonstrate competence in. And so basically, summarization is sort of reorienting your client to where you were before. Um, it's also uh, pointing out during the process, along with um, uh, paraphrasing where you would like to take the therapy for next session and some of the follow-up work to be done in the interim by the client. So he starts off by saying, last time we spoke about insomnia after intake, letting her know that he recognized there was not a lot of time devoted to the presenting problems that Elizabeth has. And so now he wants to then ask the open ended question, where would you like to begin today? With a smile on his face, letting her know that she's in the driver's seat of therapy and that it's up to her to determine where they go.
We can start there because I had some issues sleeping this weekend.
Okay.
Yeah, so I had told you during our last meeting that alcohol's been a problem for me lately.
Yes.
And my girlfriend and I were doing sober October, where you don't drink for the whole month of October.
Okay.
But then we got distracted by some Halloween parties this weekend.
I see.
Yeah, so we went out Friday night, had a little too much to drink. And we went out Saturday night and also had a little too much to drink. So then when that happened, I started feeling really anxious and had some trouble sleeping this weekend.
So there, Elizabeth seems to be happy with the fact that Jonathan gave her the opportunity to choose where she wanted to begin therapy. And so she decided that she was going to start there with the with insomnia, and she started to actually address some of the some of the concerns that she had over the weekend. She indicates that she had trouble sleeping, and then starts to actually indicate to Jonathan that she was trying to do sober October, which meant that she wasn't going to drink for the entire month of October. Um, but because of Halloween, she went to a couple Halloween parties and she had some drinks. And so Jonathan is using encouragers. He's shaking his head yes, and is fairly close to the client. She seems to be comfortable with the arrangement of the seating in the room and the space available. And so it's very interpersonal. Brief note here. This recording is unfortunately overcome for a segment of the recording by sunlight. This was an oversight on our part. Um, we actually chose this room to try to get around sunlight that was peering into a room adjacent to this room, and the sun got us at a certain point. So you'll notice that it is very difficult for a segment of time to see Jonathan's face, but you can kind of see his outline. You can always hear his voice very well. But we do apologize for the sun blacking out. So at this point, Jonathan is about to respond to Elizabeth's description of how her weekend went. Did you enjoy yourself?
I enjoyed myself while we were out. I did not enjoy myself after the alcohol wore off.
Okay, and the reason I ask, not making light of the situation at all, is, self-care and pleasurable activities, especially with friends, is encouraged. That's a good thing to help, and it can actually, those positive feelings can actually help with sleeping. So right then, Jonathan, the therapist, indicates uh, that he wants to. Well, he asks her, "Did she have a good time? Did she enjoy herself?" So right then, he's not signaling to her that having a few drinks on the weekend with friends, even though you were trying to do sober October, is a problem initially. Because it's, again, the social worker is not trying to impart his views of whatever they might be, or her views, whatever they might be, onto the client. It's up to the client to determine what the presenting problem is that he or she wants addressed. So Jonathan doesn't begin by imparting any value judgments onto Elizabeth, but as you'll see, he then begins to ask follow up questions to sort of orient where therapy is supposed to go. What is it that Elizabeth is looking for? What is bringing her in today, other than the insomnia? So, what I'm hearing is that you've been trying to live a sober life. You mentioned sober October. It's something that you're working on. But this past weekend, for 2 days, you drank how many drinks?
A lot.
A lot.
I may have lost count.
You may have lost count. Okay, so if you had to put it into like cup amounts or glasses, how many glasses of alcohol would you say you had?
Maybe 8 to 10.
8 to 10. Okay.
Per night.
Oh, okay. All right. So what is it exactly that you're looking for from therapy? Because what I'm hearing is, on the one hand, you want to be sober, but on the other hand, you went out and had 8 to 10 drinks 2 nights in a row.
I did.
What are you looking for? So right here, Jonathan displayed a couple of skills. He is utilizing paraphrasing, um, because he is restating what Elizabeth has said to him in short and concise bits, so that Elizabeth can feel that she's being heard, and that he's paying attention. That's verbal tracking, that is attending to Elizabeth as a whole person. And it also demonstrates one of social work's core values, which is the dignity and worth of a person. Jonathan is paying attention. He also is demonstrating the skill of confrontation early on in the therapeutic process, um, in a way that will help to give some clarity to both of them as to what Elizabeth is looking for. He states, "Hey, on the one hand, you say you're trying to do sober October. On the other hand, you had 8 to 10 drinks for days on the weekend in a row. What is it that you're looking for from therapy?" And that's an open-ended question. So um, I think that gives some structure to this therapeutic session, and will allow Elizabeth to sort of take the driver's seat again and self-determine where she wants the process to go.
I've recognized in the last year or so that I have been using alcohol to calm my mind in an attempt to shut it off, and I realized recently that it's become a problem.
Okay, so it's not out there to shut you off.
It shuts my mind off while I'm doing it, and then it just makes everything worse. And it really bothers me that I don't have control over it anymore. I don't feel like I have control over it anymore.
Now, when you say you don't have control over it, what do you think was the it? Now, before she responds to that question, um, I want to point out a couple more skills that Jonathan was using there. So, in addition to, again, demonstrating that paraphrasing skill, where he's sort of stating back to her what she's saying to him, he's also asking for clarification. So he asks, what do you mean? What is it that uh, when you say that you are uh, having trouble drinking? What is it that you mean by that? He's also using interpretation as a skill. So uh, if we back this up just a little bit, actually, um, just to help me, my apologies here. um, he's offering the skill of interpretation. He wants to make sure that he is actually framing the presenting problem that Elizabeth is articulating correctly.
Kind of while I'm doing it, and that just makes everything worse. And it really bothers me that I don't have control over it anymore. I don't feel like I have control over it.
So when you say that you don't have control over
Now,
it, what do you mean? You don't have control over it. What do you mean? Right. So that again, that is demonstrating the skill of clarification and interpretation skills, because where Jonathan asks for clarification as they go step by step, but then at the same time tries to kind of interpret in real time, in motion, to make sure that he's getting all the information. So right here, and she's going to further shed some light on her understanding or perception of the events. This is a good skill because this is still fact finding um, time. So it's building on that intake process in a clinical setting to help the social worker understand what the presenting problem is for the client. And it's not necessarily jumping to conclusions. It's not the social worker imparting his or her values or view of the situation at all. It's letting Elizabeth guide, or the client guide, how the therapy session takes place.
Once I start drinking, I can't stop.
Okay, so you're having trouble stopping drinking.
I'm having trouble with moderation, yes.
So she right there even uses a different word choice than Jonathan, which uh, could be indicating that Jonathan might have used something that could have been perceived as a microaggression. Jonathan says, "So you're having trouble stopping drinking," and she says, "I'm having trouble with moderation." And so Jonathan doesn't even make a big deal out of it, as you notice. He just says, "Okay," and shakes his head. So the therapist is allowing the client to sort of even articulate the language around the therapeutic process in a way that makes that her, in this case Elizabeth, feel comfortable, feel okay with the way that he is interpreting the information that he's receiving in real time. And do you find that you sleep better or worse after drinking?
Definitely worse.
Worse. And so right here, again, asking, in this case, a close-ended question, do you find that you sleep better or worse from drinking? He's trying to connect the prior information that he received from the initial therapeutics intake process of insomnia to now the presenting problem of alcohol. Elizabeth is making it clear to the therapist that she is struggling with moderation with alcohol. She finds this to be a problem, which is what has brought her into therapy at this time. And so he is asking that close ended question to try to make the connection between the two to see if for her this is an issue. Does she actually believe that her insomnia is exacerbated by the consumption of alcohol? And then we go from there. So that's paraphrasing, that's reflection of meaning, because it's demonstrating that he is hearing correctly what it is that she's articulating. There's no feeling words, just in the statement, "I'm having trouble with moderation." But as you'll soon see, he's going to start to get into how she feels as a result of her struggle with moderation. And he's utilizing that skill by asking for clarification throughout. So You last time we spoke, you also mentioned that you had recently broken up with Eric.
Yes.
This was your long-term boyfriend.
Yes.
Can you sort of touch on more of that?
Yeah, so we had been dating for a few years. We lived together for a few years. I thought everything was good, and then we hit a bit of a rough patch. And what I do in relationships when things get rough is I leave, I turn and run.
Okay.
Very bad at communication, very bad at sitting down and talking to someone and saying, here's my problem, let's talk through this, which is also something I would like to work through with you.
Absolutely.
Because I want to be able to be in a relationship where I can communicate.
I see. So you and Eric, you felt had a good relationship, and so then you noticed that you were struggling to communicate with him. And did he end the relationship, or did you? So right there, Jonathan demonstrates again the skill of paraphrasing. So he's asking, "Hey," um, or rather, he's restating what Elizabeth says. Elizabeth says, "Hey, like we've been together, we broke up recently. I'm having some issues with this," and so Jonathan restates that language back to Elizabeth, and then asks the follow up question, which is closed ended: Did he end things, or did you? So now he's trying to connect insomnia and alcohol to the now concern, which is, hey, I've recently had a breakup. I feel I have trouble communicating. So really, Elizabeth is sort of piling on the list of issues that she's having, and Jonathan wants to make sure he's keeping clear as this narrative is moving dynamically in real time.
It was a little bit of both.
Okay.
I think I probably did just because I didn't want to sit down and say, here's our problems, because I didn't even know what they were. Let's work through them. It was like, I don't have the time or the energy for this. Yeah.
Can you give me some examples of where you struggled with him with communication?
Yeah.
So there now, after, and this might be considered a weakness, she explains her sort of trouble at communicating, and instead of just restating, so you feel that you have trouble with communication and that's a problem for you, and kind of leaving it at that, Jonathan just states, I understand. And so I think maybe that might have been a mistake that he made there. I think moving forward, it would probably be better for the therapist to sort of stick to the language of the client instead of kind of signaling he understands, because you may notice when he says that, it kind of, it was almost pushy, like it just kind of, all right, moving past that, let's continue forward. I'm going to back it up just a little bit to see if we can both catch that.
I think I probably did just because I didn't want to sit down and say, here's our problems, because I didn't even know what they were. Let's work through them. It was like, I don't have the time or the energy for this. Yeah.
Can you? So yeah, got a problem with that. Like just say, I understand. And I think he thought that maybe that was signaling to her some additive empathy that he understands, but it could almost come off dismissive. So I would caution against in the future with therapy sessions with Elizabeth stating that I understand, and instead maybe just stick to the client's words or use silence after she shares information like that, and then follow up with further clarification questions. But just stick to more one-to-one paraphrasing instead of sort of disclosing, I understand. Give me some examples of where you struggle with him with communication.
Yeah.
So now he is now shifting to get a better therapeutic picture, with an open-ended question. Can you give me some examples of where you struggle with communication with Eric?
So he's a few years younger.
Okay.
And he was always the life of the party. He did a lot of partying. I actually was never a drinker until him and I started dating. And it was like we were having people over every night. We were going somewhere every night.
So he was the big drinker in the relationship.
He was. He was the life of the party. Everyone loved when Eric showed up.
So again, he's shaking his head yes.
Him and I actually started dating shortly after I broke off an engagement. And I think I turned to him just to go have fun with him.
So you were attracted to the energy of him being that dynamic life of the party.
Very
enjoying
much.
The atmosphere, drinking.
Yes.
Okay. So he's using encouragers. He's shaking his head yes. He's paraphrasing and interpreting her information at the same time. And she is nodding in agreement. She seems to be more comfortable at this point in the communication. She's almost leaning into Jonathan as she's expressing herself. And willing to offer this information. She does not seem uncomfortable. And he accurately interpreted the fact that, hey, like everybody loved when my partner showed up. He was the life of the party. And Jonathan is making sure to continue to connect the presenting problem for Elizabeth. Hey, alcohol, communication. I've had a breakup. This was my former partner. Everybody loved him. He was the drinker. She says, I didn't even drink that much before we got together, and things shifted while we were together with respect to the alcohol. Now, if at this point, I'd also like to introduce the 5 P's of the biopsychosocial approach. It was initially 4 P's, but presenting problem was that fifth P that was introduced. The other 4 P's would be predisposing, precipitating, perpetuating, and protective factors. Again, that fifth P being presenting problem. So if from what we've heard to this point of the video, her presenting problems are multifold, right? Their insomnia, their alcohol, their the breakup with Eric, and their communication. Uh, we might say that her protective factors are her friends. She's trying to utilize alcohol as a protective factor, but as you see her stating, she recognizes she has the insight that hey, alcohol is not really helping me. It's causing further exacerbation of my insomnia that I've had for 20 years. And I don't feel that that's helping me to communicate. Um, but her friends would be considered a protective factor because they're getting her out of the house. They're taking her to social events. They're trying to help her interact. She went out this past weekend and drank a lot with her friends, and while that may have hindered her in the long run, she had some temporary relief from that social interacting. The perpetuating factors might be the fact that the parties, the alcohol consumption, and her friends sort of, I don't want to say coercion, but like peer pressuring might be perpetuating the feelings of anxiety that she indicates. And the consumption of alcohol, which is inflaming her trouble sleeping at night and that feeling of anxiety. The precipitating factors with respect to the presenting problems would be the breakup. It would be the prior relationships. Um, Toward the end of the video, the social worker makes the shift to asking about, hearing about that prior relationship to Eric and how that might impact the current issue for her being insomnia, alcohol, the breakup, and communication. And the predisposing factors were covered in the intake. She indicates that uh, her parents don't struggle with alcoholism, that they're not struggling with excessive drinking, that she says is the problem. Again, the social worker is not calling her an alcoholic. She's calling herself, she indicated that she's having trouble with moderation. Um, so you wouldn't say that there were any predisposing issues with respect to her childhood. But what was predisposing to the presenting problem was Eric, the life of the party, the one who drank, the one who encouraged her to sort of take on some of his values.
And then it developed into a relationship, and we were in a relationship for a long time. Um, and I think that was always what I saw it as. So I never saw a future with him necessarily, but we had fun together, and I thought we were happy. And I think a future is something he wanted to discuss, or at least have something to say, hey, we're working towards this.
Okay. So you were happy with where you felt the relationship was, but it sounds like you recognized at some point that he had a different vision of where the relationship was and where he wanted to be found and everything. Right?
You did, yes.
So right there, he checks out. He says, "Did I get that right?" And that's like a small checkout. The bigger checkout would be the summarizing, but the small checkout, which is clarification, is, "Hey, did I get that right?" And he's putting together the segments of the situation, right? Which was that when he asked, like, "Did you break it off?" Did he? She says, "I think it was a little bit of both. It was probably me because I ended in the relationship. I didn't give adequate time to this." Um, and he also is using reflection of feeling now. He uses the word happy. Hey, you were happy when he came in to the relationship and sort of rescued you from the difficult time or period from before. So that's the next skill of the 9 skills. And how did you feel once you recognized that he wanted something else? And so then asks the open-ended question to help reflect more feeling. How did you feel when you recognized he wanted something else? You recognized that there was a shift. You were happy with the way the relationship was in the beginning, and then um, you're now noticing that you two are on 2 different pages. How did you feel when you figured that out?
I left.
You left.
I did.
Okay, so
and I don't mean to laugh, but that's what I do is I turn and leave when things get serious. Yeah. And I don't like that about myself.
2 things. So you left, and he immediately follows it up with you left. So what he learns, and so to sort of kind of break the third person, what I learned um, in the process of giving therapy was that I don't always have to be so formal with the paraphrasing. Sometimes it's natural to just immediately repeat what the person said, and the timing there was perfect. And that's something that I would say is another weakness. I'm struggling with the timing of the paraphrasing. Um, and for the purposes of this assignment, um, we sort of kind of rushed through the getting to the solution piece, which we'll cover soon with information giving. But I also noticed, because I've had some practice with other individuals with this very scenario, um, is rushing to give that information, wanting to resolve some of the problems right away. Because I guess I've had a longer period of not practicing to be a therapist, and so in that in that time in the frame of thinking, I always rush to give solutions. I want to fix problems right away. I'm a problem fixer, and that's kind of a problem. So I'm trying to learn how not to rush to fix something and to utilize more listening and attending to behaviors and verbal tracking. Um, so those are just some things that I would say are weaknesses. I would say the strengths that I'm demonstrating is in that paraphrasing, is in that clarification that I'm demonstrating, is in that verbal tracking and that um, uh, reflection of feeling and reflection of meaning. And so when I'm paraphrasing and I'm interpreting information in real time, I'm using the client's language. And she's nodding in agreement. Again, she has what appears to be like the micro expression of happiness across her face. She feels heard. She feels, as she's demonstrating and nodding in agreement and saying yes, that the therapist is getting it right. Okay. Yeah, and let's touch on that because I noticed you use the word bad when referring to communication, but you also state that you want to work on that. It's something that you want to improve on. Did did he struggle to communicate with you as well? Was he able to communicate his feelings prior to the breakup? And so the therapist here is still kind of hammering away at that reflection of feeling. And I think what was done well here was saying, hey, let's focus on the fact that you use the word bad. I noticed that. So I want to kind of now let's go into that. I think there's some good work we could do here with focusing on the fact that you feel that it's bad that you're struggling with communication. But then the shift kind of turns from Elizabeth and sort of is asking now about this other person, which I think I did a good job, or therapist does a good job here of sort of making it relevant to the situation. But at the same time, I think uh, it might be better for the therapist to leave that out because I'm trying to bring the client to the present moment um, to discuss what it is that she is having issues with, but at the same time, now shifting the focus from Elizabeth to Eric. And this is not Eric's session, this is Elizabeth's session. So that is a potential weakness here. It might be subtractive empathy. It might have been better to just focus on Elizabeth's issues and continue to go forward. But as you'll see, the therapist is clever to a certain extent in making it work.
He was not great at it, and I think probably because I was not extremely receptive to it.
Well, that's I like the word choice. That's good. Good insight that you displayed there. Is you have some awareness that you both struggled with communication. So I want to make sure that you recognize that the blame in a relationship can go both ways in terms of the struggling with the communication piece, because you use words like bad. And if you could give me another feeling word, like how does it make you feel to recognize that you are bad at communication? So, a couple of things are happening there. Um, Jonathan is asking for more feeling words to help Elizabeth connect more in reflection of feeling to how she feels with the fact of feeling uh, that she's bad at communication, because you'll notice Elizabeth isn't really giving a lot of emotion language. She's using more logic here. And so Jonathan's really trying to push Elizabeth to get in touch with her feelings about the situation. Um, so let's back that up just a little bit. Oh, so Jonathan also um, wanted to help Elizabeth sort of place the appropriate responsibility for the issue of communication with parties other than just herself. Um, in social work, it's really important in clinical practice to help the client identify the problem in the appropriate context. So this is sort of helping to reorient that frontal cortex to logically interpret situations not just as personal failures, but giving credit where credit is due to the other social influences and factors that might be perpetuating the presenting problem of communication. And that was the breakup with Eric. Eric also had trouble with communication, as she indicates. But Jonathan, was trying to help sort of minimize some of the cognitive distortion of, hey, it's all my fault. And I feel uh, like a failure. I'm bad at communicating. It's good insight that you displayed there, is you have some awareness that you both struggled with communication. So I want to make sure that you recognize that the blame in a relationship can go both ways in terms of the struggling with the communication piece, because you use words like bad. And if you could give me another feeling word, like how does it make you feel to recognize that you are bad at communication?
It makes me feel extremely immature, I think, is probably probably the best way to describe it. Because I'm 40 years old. I want to be a grown up and be able to sit down with my significant other and say, this is what I'm feeling. How do you feel about that? But I don't feel like I can do that right now.
And I'm noticing you're fidgeting a little bit. Does it make you uncomfortable to admit that?
It does.
Okay. So what he does at the end there is sort of attend to behaviors. He noticed that, hey, Elizabeth seems to be uncomfortable. She's fidgeting. So maybe there's some shame and some guilt manifesting in the form of excessive hand motions. Um, but he's also still struggling to get Elizabeth to connect it to more feeling words. Elizabeth is still kind of operating in that logic, in that meaning, reflection of meaning. So he's still pushing to get her to sort of use words like, "Hey, I feel sad," or "I feel ashamed," uh, where she because I'm struggling with communication, I'm bad at communication. Whereas Elizabeth is stating, "Hey, I feel like a child. I'm 40 years old. I should be able to communicate my feelings and ask for the same in return from my partner. I'm having trouble doing that. It makes me feel like I'm immature." So that's more so a reflection, um, or she's presenting with meaning, more meaning based cognition, but it's still a cognitive distortion because is it really true that you are a child just because you struggle with communicating? Plenty of people do. So Jonathan is doing the right thing there and trying to get more feeling words so that he understands how she really grasps this on an emotional level, not just a cognitive level, and she's kind of having trouble making that connection. So this may actually open up future opportunities in therapy to reflect more on feeling and to do more feeling based work. It might help her get in touch with not only how she feels inside, but then in ways that she can actually be receptive to Eric or, in this case, future partners' feelings, and may help to break down some of those communication barriers. Elizabeth, what I'm hearing is that you're looking for some help with communication, that you feel that you're not acting at age level, that you are immature, were your words, and you are having some difficulties with drinking, with sleeping, and you feel that the communication between you and Eric broke down. I believe in the intake papers, you stated that there were incomprehensible differences that emerged. And so you're looking for a couple of things. Some relief from alcohol. You admit that it's a problem for you.
Yes.
Okay, so you want to change direction with that. And at the same time, you want help with communication. Did I hear that right?
Yes.
So right there, Jonathan ended it with I mean, it's actually confrontation that he's using again for clarification, which is another one of the nine skills. Um, and he's also summarizing. So this was a checkout moment. And you'll notice throughout the video that he actually checks out multiple times to sort of bring it all together. He even mentions a quote from the intake process. So he's constantly sort of reframing the therapy session around where they began with intake, with the presenting problems of insomnia, alcohol, breakup, and communication, using paraphrasing throughout to sort of make sure that he's interpreting and presenting back to Elizabeth why she was there in the first place, which is to seek some help on these things. And he even mentions, and this was great, you use the language, these were your words, that you are not acting mature. And you think and asking for clarification in the middle of this summary, um, you think it's a problem that you're drinking. So again, he is not imparting his value system as a social worker. He's letting Elizabeth guide the therapy. And that is ideal therapy. Even as an amateur therapist, I recognize that is the key to good therapy. You let the client drive, and so it's self-determination. It's not infantilizing the client. It's not assuming that you as an expert would know better than what the client knows about themselves, because everybody, as was indicated by Maria at the beginning, is an expert of their own story. As social workers, it's just our job to help give, to be of service and give some information and help where we can to the experts of their own story, to the client. It's not our job to be fixers, to wave wands, or to try to give more than we are capable of doing. Where we are in partnership with our clients, we aren't uh, we aren't here to overstep what the client presents with.
Okay, great. Well, at this point, I'd like to give you some information maybe that can be of use to you, and you can make the decision as to what's right for you.
So right there, Jonathan, now he demonstrates the skill of information giving, and he says that you can make the decision of what's right for you. That's self determination. It's beautiful.
Okay. So there's a couple programs that we do offer. We do have AA meetings here in the building. They're not facilitated by me, but another social worker that I can get you connected with if you'd be comfortable with that.
So he asks if you'd be comfortable with it, and pauses for her to respond whether or not she would. That he could set her up with AA. He recognizes that she might not be comfortable with that. So he wants to give her the opportunity to reject if she chooses AA as an option to address alcohol.
Okay.
Okay.
I've never considered doing it before. It makes me nervous, the thought of getting up and sharing with people.
Yeah, so you feel nervous about sort of divulging some of your personal information.
Definitely.
And there is the first feeling word out of the whole session, right? Other than bad, which is bad is ambiguous, but it makes me nervous. That's fear, clearly, right? So there it is. So there's some breakthrough even within the session. Hey, it makes me nervous to get up in front of people and have to speak about my own issues. Do I have to do that in AA? So that was great. And Jonathan paraphrased that and reflected those feelings right back. So it makes you nervous that you would have to articulate what it is you're going with or feeling to the rest of the group of strangers that you don't know. And she says yes.
Wait, do I have to share those meetings?
You do not. So you can just start by coming in and sort of listening to the program, listening to the stories, and it will move at your pace. Whenever you feel comfortable, you can share. You can also seek sponsorship to sort of hold you accountable to the STEM program.
Okay, great.
So that it's totally up to you as to how far you want to take this with that evidence. And the other,
So then he immediately puts the fire out. Hey, by saying no, you don't have to present anything. You don't have to speak. You can just show up and you can leave. And ends it with it's totally up to you how far you want to take this. You again are in control. So that is empowering the client to make her own or his own decisions of how he wants to utilize these tools. Again, these are just tools. These are not designed to intrude upon people's lives. With respect, these are delicate issues. So he's again letting her know you're in control. And what's also awesome about this is the fact that she indicates, hey, I feel out of control with communication, with relationships, with my ability to sleep, with alcohol, right? And so now Jonathan is hammering, hey, you are in control. You're in control of what you want to do about this. The fact that you came to therapy to address this is a protective factor. Okay. And you are empowered now to have control. Maybe for the first time, you're recognizing that control because the therapist said, utilizing his or her authority, you are empowered with authority now. So that's great. I think that's a good way of sort of grounding the client in the experience so that they can feel they're in control of their lives, given the fact that Elizabeth feels so out of control in some of the other issues. And now he's going to indicate the second option that she can have that might be more conducive to her feelings of insecurity with expressing herself.
program that we offer is also Zoom meeting sessions. that are group oriented where you can participate anonymously as well. So
Okay.
they do have a webcam and a microphone component that will work with a software device or hardware device, I should say, that you can use at home in your pajamas if you wish.
Great.
And it would function the same. The only difference is there's no sponsorship that you could seek as a component of that. We do offer that as well.
Okay.
Okay. And then the other piece you may want to work on is maybe just some listening and communication skills. Um, because you mentioned that you were having difficulties with communication in this relationship. Had
So Jonathan really gives like a three pronged approach to some of the treatment options. So as I mentioned before, he gives her the first two, which are you can go to AA meetings, you don't have to speak, you can do Zoom meetings from home. The drawback is that there's no sponsorship with respect to that, although she could probably seek that outside of anonymously uh, connecting with individuals. She just wouldn't be seen if she kept her camera and her microphone silent and off. But it's totally up to her if she would feel more comfortable just attending those and seeing how the process works. And then he offers the third component, which is, hey, you made uh, known that you struggle with communication. Are you interested in learning some communication skills? Are you interested in improving on that, working on that? And so that's addressing two out of, I would say, the four presenting problems. So that's addressing communication, that's addressing alcohol, hopefully minimizing the impact of the alcohol by doing something about it. She states that it is an issue she wants to address, will help to make her sleeping, the insomnia, which is kind of outside of the scope of a therapist's role, because we're not physicians, although we could probably teach, however effective they may or may not be, some relaxation techniques around bedtime to help mitigate some of that issue. But we're addressing the alcohol, which is something that is more in her control in the long run, hopefully, by giving the option of AA either in person or anonymously. And then the communication piece. We can't bring Eric back to her as she ended that, but indicated that they probably mutually ended that relationship because they both didn't know how to address those. They came together around partying and alcohol. But we can work on those communication skills, helping her connect more with her feelings, with the reflection of feeling, along with that reflection of meaning, minimizing some of those cognitive distortions, putting her in touch with how she feels, so then she can be in touch with future partners' feelings by offering communication as as a skill to be learned, and it's giving her hope, right? So instead of her coming in here and feeling like, hey, like none of these issues are fixable, that everything's out of control, and choosing suicide, right, as an option, or continuing to drink and not addressing the issues. Although she didn't seem to present any problems of potentially self harm, um, we gave her a way out immediately, as you saw here.
um, I believe you mentioned last time that you had recently changed relationships prior to the 2 year relationship with Eric. Did I get that right?
You did, yeah.
Okay.
So right here, this could be potentially subtractive empathy because not only we just gave solutions or potential tools to sort of tie things up and end on a hopeful note, and then the social worker is now going back into um, some of the issues that is kind of taking us away from the present moment. So I would say that this is a weakness, and in the future it might be better to if the social worker is going to ask that kind of a question, that it happen toward the front end of the therapeutic session and not toward the back end after we've already given solutions potentially. It doesn't seem to throw Elizabeth off, and again, social worker was clever in how asking about the prior relationships could sort of further buttress the presenting problems. That, hey, here's another example of communication. Maybe adding a potential fifth now presenting problem, which is the timing between relationships, and maybe does she have some insecurities in being alone? This can go back towards some things that are maybe unaddressed in terms of her connection to her own feelings. Is she afraid of being alone? The social worker doesn't ask that, but just kind of wanted to understand the timing of the relationships. Similar to maybe like the timing of births. If they're too close together, it could be harmful to the mother. If relationships are too close together, it may be potentially harmful to the person, as you'll see she indicates.
Can you talk about that? Because it seems like it was a really fast turnaround between the ending of that relationship.
And it was. I was engaged to be married, and that ended also very abruptly. And I had known Eric for quite a few years. So when I ended my engagement, he kind of swooped in and was like, "Hey, I know you're sad. Come hang out with us." And I did, because I was looking for, I had a huge void in my life that needed to be filled, and that was how it started off just as friends, and then it just developed into a relationship. So I never, I don't think, properly healed from breaking off that engagement.
So what's great, before Jonathan responds, is she made the connection. Hey, I don't think I'm properly healed from the prior relationship before jumping into the relationship with Eric. So that can be it works, right? So that's potential additive empathy there, because hey, like, she had the insight. I didn't heal fully from that, and I went into this next relationship. So it worked. It could be potentially off-putting and not work, which is why I mentioned it. Let's see how Jonathan responds.
You didn't get any closure from the prior relationship. He just sort of came in and sort of like, was your knight in shining?
Yes.
Okay.
So Jonathan uses humor there, which is great. Elizabeth laughs. Seems like she agreed with that characterization, that interpretation of the events. So it's keeping things on a light note, and helps to establish more of that rapport between Jonathan and Elizabeth. And he paraphrased well by stating, "Hey, you didn't get any closure in that prior relationship. Eric comes in, he kind of takes your mind away from the dark cloud that you were under from a prior relationship, where you may have been ruminating on communication issues, where you may have been self-medicating with alcohol, where you may have had trouble sleeping, and you were dealing with the same problems you're dealing with now with the breakup. Then he kind of interrupted your period of reflection and potential growth, and you didn't go to therapy. Then you're in it now, which is a good thing, but everything else was not. So that was good paraphrasing, and good use of humor, uh, to help Elizabeth feel connected
And
and
so
listen
you
to.
indicated feeling happy at him coming in and sort of intervening in sort of that negative period for you.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
And he uses more feeling words again, so that's more reflection of feeling. You indicate feeling happy. That feeling of happiness is implied, right? It's not explicitly stated, but it's helping her make the connection again with those reflections of feeling. And she says, "Yes, exactly. I did feel happy when he got involved with me."
Okay. So just to kind of summarize everything that we've covered today, because it's a lot.
So right here, and I apologize for prematurely pausing it there. Jonathan again is using summarization. So he's checking out now and doing an even bigger summary. He had just done one prior to shifting to the prior relationship to Eric, and now he's doing it again to kind of tie it all together as they are closing out the therapy session.
Um,
Which is one of the
we
skills.
started out with discussing your difficulty with sleeping. You indicate that it's been crippling insomnia for the last 20 years. You find that you struggle to sleep more when you drink more, and you're having 8 to 10 drinks when you drink. You indicate that you drink more on weekends than during the week. You mentioned that you've been drinking to kind of take your mind off of some of the anxiety and sadness that you feel at the end of the relationship with Eric. But that the alcohol isn't helping sort of give you relief. The relief is temporary. And so you're looking for some help and also wanting to understand maybe its connection to the breakup with Eric and troubles with communication. Does that sound about right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you came to the right place, and I can certainly help you.
Thank you.
So I want you to at least take some comfort in that. I know that this is a difficult time for you, but don't panic, because we can do this. Is there anything else that you'd like to discuss with our remaining time?
So what was great about that last little segment is Jonathan, after he restated everything, he summarized accurately to Elizabeth's satisfaction the entirety of their therapeutic session together. He also stops and gives, in my opinion, the strongest form of additive empathy, which is, hey, you came to the right place. We can do this together. So he is letting her know that hope is possible. There is relief. And I'm almost positive that that's one of the skills that was highlighted in the beginning in some of the slides. And I apologize for not having the slides ready, but I'm just kind of thinking in real time. So when you are with a client, in addition to those basic listening skills, those interpersonal skills, uh, those influencing client action skills, um, when you're engaging the client, right, you're also trying to sort of help orient the client to the possibility of change, of hope in this therapeutic process. So what Jonathan did there was to say, hey, like you came to the right place. I am going to help you. I am going to uphold my end of this process and say, look, uh, like you matter, you have worth, you have value. It's dignity and worth of a person. So it's one of the core values, right? And it would be disingenuous to end the session without, since this is the first true official full session, without stating, hey, like you came to the right place. We're gonna fix this. And she smiles toward the end there. And then he shifts and says another open-ended question. Is there anything else you'd like to discuss with the remaining time? Again, empowering the client to drive uh, the session to somewhere else. So I think those two things are strengths. They're helpful. Not only did you come to the right place, but where do you want to go from here? Is there anything else?
No, I think we covered it all.
Okay.
And she smiles.
I'm available by phone or email. If you need to get back in, we can have an emergency session. Did you, because I don't see this in the paperwork, did you want to have meetings once a week, twice a week? What do you feel comfortable with?
I'd love to do it once a week.
Once a week, okay.
And so this was kind of showing off at this point. The session ended well. Elizabeth smiles. Elizabeth says, we covered everything. She feels comfortable. And so Jonathan wanted to state to her, hey, I'm available by phone and email. If we need to get you back in here so we can address whatever's going on, we can do that. So that he's making himself available to her as her therapist. And then he asks, which to me was the showing off point, hey, like, how many sessions do you want per week? So that's kind of like sort of focusing, planning on the future for Jonathan as a legitimate social work therapist. Part of the planning and scheduling of how many times a week they're going to meet. So I'll just let the video run out here.
Okay. All right. Well, Elizabeth, thank you for coming in, and
Thank
we'll see you
you.
next time.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
And that was the end of the therapeutic session. So I think overall we both did a fairly decent job there at um, sort of articulating the skills that uh, um, that we had to do. So I'm sorry. I thought it said that when I minimized this that it would have stopped the recording, but it did not. So just to sort of summarize and bring us back to a close of this second video now, which is for the assignment of sort of analyzing the situation. So the video itself was supposed to demonstrate 9 skills. We're paraphrasing, reflection of feeling, open and closed ended questions, clarification, summarization, information giving, confrontation, interpretation, and attending behavior. All 9 skills are captured in that video, and I went through each and every one of those 9 skills and indicated where they were. The paraphrasing again was sort of accurately restating what the client said in their language. Reflection of feeling would be focusing on the times that the client expresses how they feel. In that case, Elizabeth using words like bad, which was sort of ambiguous, and then her using language like "I'm happy" when we got together. It makes me anxious to do AA. Do I have to do that? Open and close ended questions like where would you like to begin? Is there anything else that you want to do with the remaining time? Closed ended questions like did he end the relationship or did you? Asking for clarification. Did he end the relationship or did you? How did it make you feel to find out that you two were on 2 different pages when it came to the relationship? Summarizing throughout. As I said, there were a few points that I did checkouts, where the therapist did checkouts with that. Uh, so, kind of tying it all together. Hey, you came in initially for insomnia. Where do we go from here? Which is like a smaller thing. Uh, um, to you know, you initially came in here for insomnia. You struggled with, in her words, moderation with alcohol. You had a breakup. You think it's bad that you have trouble communicating. You feel that it makes you appear as though you're a child. You don't like that. Um, I see that you want to come in here for some help with alcohol. You say that that's a problem. You don't know if you're okay with AA, but you might be okay if you don't have to speak to go in person. You like the idea of anonymously watching videos via Zoom, and then you want some help with communication. Could we work on some of those skills? I make myself available to you. Is there anything else that you want to touch on? That was also a demonstration of information giving because it is giving that info to the client as part of the treatment process. He uses confrontation throughout. That was an example of confrontation demonstrated at the end. It was also at the very beginning with orienting. Hey, Elizabeth, you say you did sober October, but you had a lot of drinks over the weekend. What is it that you want from therapy? Why are you here? And she guided the very good session from there. Interpretation, what he's asking for meaning to make sure he's got it right. And he even says, "Did I get that right?" Um, Making sure that he understood it correctly, and then attending behavior. And one good example of that was when he noticed, "Does it make you uncomfortable to share some of this? I notice you're fidgeting." So those were all 9 skills. I apologize for this video being over an hour long. It's longer than the initial recording. But I wanted to make sure I touched on all of that. So I think in terms of responsiveness to the topic, I think I clearly addressed the topic and respond effectively to all aspects of the assignment. In terms of communication of ideas, I explore the issues showing thorough comprehension of the text, going beyond the obvious class discussion, uh, obviously, Maria, it's up to you to determine whether or not I effectively did that. I think I did, but I am receptive to ways that I could have been more effective with that. I think this is coherently organized with ideas supported by app reasoning. Again, it's for you to decide, but I believe that that was demonstrated. And for the sake of keeping this video under an hour and a half, at this point, I'm going to move on. And then in terms of control of the mechanics, sentence structure, grammar, and spelling, I'm articulating myself well. I'm giving examples. I'm even walking you through the video. Again, I hope that all of this came together correctly. It's my first time using Vimeo to record and screen record at the same time. So I'll leave that up to you. If it were a paper, I know APA format. I'm not sure if I've turned anything into you physically in terms of APA. But what I would say is if I were to write this into a paper, I would eliminate all of the I language as much as possible, even though this is a reflection piece. So I could use I, but I could say, well, this paper reflects on the interview between Elizabeth and Jonathan Thomas. In an interview setting, it would have a cover page, double spaced, 12-point font, 1-inch margins, Times New Roman font. And it would have the name of the assignment in the header. It would have, practice therapy session. It would have in the lower right hand corner the page number and listed throughout the page numbers. And then, as I said, the name of the assignment again, my name, um, the title of the assignment before that, the uh, so it might say like practice therapy session, therapist Jonathan with Elizabeth underneath, my full name, the date below that, and then each section of the assignment would have like a header that's bolded. So like the first part might be uh, sort of the introduction to the therapy session. Another heading might be, presenting problems. Another section might be sort of a summary or checking out to um, uh, like what I did with the checkout. I almost was sort of narrating in APA format how I would have like typed out the actual therapy session. So I apologize there. What it would have been is just sort of like simple titles that sort of demonstrate what it is that I'm breaking down for you, the reader, in terms of analyzing what I did in the initial video. And then, of course, if I use any outside resources, I could provide a reference page at the end with a list of the scholarly sources. And I probably would have quoted the text as well at various points to make my point. So hopefully you like this extremely long video. I apologize. I'm about to review it, and hopefully everything goes well, because from here I'm going to be working on more of Mr. Greg uh, intake paperwork and that biopsychosocial. So I'm feeling good about this, and hope you are too. Have a great day. Bye bye.